They called me just a maid at my own engagement party. The groom's wealthy family whispered behind my back, convinced I was nothing more than hired help trying to climb the social ladder. But when my father walked through those doors in his perfectly tailored suit, their cruel laughter turned to stunned silence. W. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Hi, I'm Elena, and today I'm sharing the most life-changing night of my existence. If you've ever been looked down upon because of your job or background, this story will resonate deeply with you. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what unfolds will leave you speechless. Let me take you back to 8 months ago, when I first encountered James at the luxury hotel where I worked as a housekeeping supervisor. The Grand Meridian was one of the city's most prestigious establishments, and I'd worked my way up from a basic room attendant to overseeing an entire floor. It wasn't glamorous work, but I took pride in ensuring every guest had an impeccable experience. That particular Tuesday morning, I was training a new team member when I noticed a guest struggling with his keycard outside the penthouse suite. He was juggling a briefcase, coffee, and phone while trying to unlock his door. Without thinking, I approached to offer assistance. "Let me help you with that," I said, gently taking his keycard and swiping it correctly. The door clicked open, and he turned to face me with the most genuine smile I'd ever seen. "You're a lifesaver," he said, his eyes crinkling with warmth. "I'm James, and apparently I'm technologically challenged when it comes to hotel keycards." "Elena," I replied, returning his smile. "And don't worry, those cards can be tricky. The magnetic strip needs to face the right direction." Instead of rushing into his room like most guests would, James lingered in the doorway. "You know, I've been staying here for business trips for months, and you're the first person who's actually smiled at me like I'm a human being rather than just another guest number." His comment surprised me. In my experience, wealthy guests often treated staff as invisible, so his acknowledgement felt refreshing. We chatted for a few minutes about the hotel's history and the city's best coffee shops. When he mentioned he'd be staying for the entire week, I found myself looking forward to our brief hallway encounters. Over the following days, James would time his exits to coincide with my floor rounds. Our conversations evolved from polite pleasantries to genuine exchanges about life, dreams, and perspectives. He'd ask about my day, remember details from previous conversations, and treat me with a respect I rarely experienced from hotel guests. I learned that James worked in real estate development, traveling frequently between cities for various projects. He spoke passionately about creating affordable housing initiatives alongside luxury developments, which revealed a social consciousness that impressed me. When I shared my own dreams of eventually opening a hospitality consulting business, he listened intently and offered encouraging words. The breakthrough moment came on Friday when James's keycard malfunctioned again. As I helped him into his room, he asked a question that would change everything. "Elena, I know this might be presumptuous, but would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Somewhere away from the hotel, just as two people getting to know each other." I hesitated, knowing that hotel policy discouraged personal relationships with guests. But something about James felt different. His interest seemed genuine, not predatory, and our conversations had revealed a kindness that drew me in. "I'd like that," I heard myself saying. "But it would have to be after my shift ends at 8. His face lit up with a boyish excitement that made my heart skip. "Perfect. I know a small bistro downtown that serves incredible pasta. Nothing fancy, just good food and great conversation." That dinner lasted 4 hours. We talked about everything from childhood memories to future aspirations. James shared stories about growing up with parents who emphasized hard work and integrity over inherited privilege. I opened up about my own background, raised by a single mother who cleaned offices at night to support us. What struck me most was how James listened. When I described the challenges of working in hospitality, the demanding guests and long hours, he didn't offer empty platitudes or try to minimize my experiences. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions and shared his own stories of difficult clients and workplace challenges. "You know what I admire about you," he said as we walked through the city center after dinner. "You take pride in your work regardless of how others perceive it. That's rare in any profession." His words meant more to me than he could have known. In a world where people often judged my worth by my job title, James saw value in my dedication and work ethic. Our relationship blossomed over the following months. James would extend his business trips or find excuses to return to the city. We'd explore local markets, attend community events, and spend quiet evenings in my modest apartment sharing takeout and dreams. I gradually learned more about James's background. His family owned several businesses, and he lived comfortably, but he never flaunted his wealth or made me feel inadequate about my financial situation. When we went out, he'd choose restaurants based on ambiance and food quality, rather than price or prestige. The first hint of his family's true wealth came when James mentioned his parents' anniversary party. "It's going to be quite an affair," he said with a slight grimace. "My mother loves elaborate celebrations, and she's been planning this for months. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." I sensed some tension in his voice when he spoke about his family, but I attributed it to normal family dynamics. Everyone has complicated relationships with their relatives, and I didn't want to pry into his personal matters. When James proposed 6 months into our relationship, it was beautifully simple. He took me to the rooftop garden of our favorite coffee shop, the same place where we'd had our third date. As the sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, he got down on one knee with a ring that was elegant without being ostentatious. "Elena, you've shown me what it means to find joy in simple moments and take pride in honest work. You've made me a better person, and I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Through tears of joy, I said yes. The ring fit perfectly, and as James slipped it onto my finger, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. The proposal itself was perfect, but James's mention of meeting his family triggered a familiar anxiety. "They're going to love you," he assured me, but I caught a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes that he quickly masked. "What have you told them about me?" I asked, suddenly conscious of the vast differences in our backgrounds. "I've told them that you're incredible, that you work hard, and that you make me happier than I've ever been," he replied, pulling me closer. "That's all that matters." But as the weeks passed and wedding planning began, James's family became an increasingly prominent topic. His mother, Victoria, had strong opinions about venues, guest lists, and traditions. She'd call James with suggestions and requirements, and I could hear the stress in his voice during these conversations. "She means well," James would say after particularly lengthy calls. "She just wants everything to be perfect." I wanted to believe him, but something in his tone suggested there was more to the story. When I asked about meeting his parents before the engagement party they insisted on hosting, James always found reasons to postpone. "Let's wait until the party," he'd say. "It'll be more special that way, and you'll meet everyone at once." The engagement party planning became a source of increasing tension. Victoria would send James detailed lists of requirements and expectations, from dress codes to seating arrangements. When I offered to help with planning or contribute financially, James quickly declined. "My parents want to handle everything," he explained. "It's their gift to us." But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being deliberately excluded from the planning process. Phone calls would end abruptly when I entered the room, and James seemed increasingly stressed as the party date approached. One evening, I decided to address my concerns directly. "James, I feel like I'm being kept at arm's length from your family. Are you ashamed of me or my background?" His response was immediate and adamant. "Elena, never think that. I'm proud of you and everything you've accomplished. My family can be complicated. They have certain expectations and ways of doing things. I just want to protect you from their initial judgments until they get to know the real you." His words were meant to be reassuring, but they only amplified my anxiety. What kind of initial judgments was he trying to protect me from? What expectations did his family have that I might not meet? The week before the engagement party, I found myself obsessing over every detail. What should I wear? How should I introduce myself? What topics of conversation would be appropriate? James tried to calm my nerves, but I could see he was struggling with his own anxiety about the evening. "Just be yourself," he kept saying. "That's the person I fell in love with, and that's who they need to see." But being myself felt increasingly complicated when I didn't know what version of myself would be acceptable to his family. I'd spent months falling in love with a man who seemed to see past social barriers and economic differences, but now I wondered if I'd been naive about the challenges we'd face. The night before the party, I stood in front of my closet feeling utterly lost. My wardrobe consisted mainly of work uniforms and casual clothes appropriate for my lifestyle. I'd purchased a navy blue dress from a department store, something elegant but not too expensive. Looking at it hanging there, I wondered if it would be suitable for whatever kind of event Victoria had planned. James arrived early that evening with flowers and takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. "You look worried," he observed, setting the food on my small dining table. "I am worried," I admitted. "I keep thinking about tomorrow night and wondering if I'll fit in with your family and their friends." James set down the containers and took my hands in his. "Elena, listen to me. These people don't define your worth. You've built a life based on your own efforts and values. That's something to be proud of, regardless of what anyone else thinks." His words were comforting, but they also revealed something troubling. The fact that he felt the need to reassure me about my worth suggested he anticipated his family might challenge it. What kind of reception was he expecting me to receive? As we ate dinner, James shared more details about his family. His father, Richard, ran multiple businesses and was known for his direct communication style. His sister, Cassandra, worked in marketing for one of the family companies and had strong opinions about social matters. His mother managed various charitable organizations and took pride in hosting elaborate social events. "They're not bad people," James emphasized. "They're just used to a certain lifestyle and social circle. It might take them time to adjust to someone from outside their usual sphere." The way he phrased it made me feel like an outsider before I'd even met them. Here was the man who'd proposed to me, already preparing excuses for his family's potential rejection. I began to wonder if James truly understood the implications of our different backgrounds, or if he'd been sheltered from the realities of social prejudice. That night, I lay awake thinking about my mother's advice from years earlier. "Mija," she'd said, "never let anyone make you feel small because of honest work. The hands that clean and serve are the hands that build the world. Remember your dignity." Her words had sustained me through years of demanding guests, condescending managers, and social situations where people dismissed me based on my profession. Tomorrow night would be the ultimate test of that philosophy. The day of the engagement party arrived with unseasonable rain, which I chose to interpret as a cleansing rather than an ominous sign. James picked me up in the early evening, looking handsome but tense in his charcoal suit. The drive to his family's estate took us through increasingly affluent neighborhoods until we reached a gated community I'd only seen in magazines. The Whitmore family mansion was breathtaking in its grandeur. Manicured lawns stretched in every direction, punctuated by elegant fountains and carefully sculpted topiaries. The house itself was a monument to generational wealth, with classical columns, expansive terraces, and enough windows to light a small village. "Breathe," James whispered as we approached the front entrance, where a valet waited to park his car. Inside, the party was already in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over guests who moved with the casual confidence that comes from never questioning your place in the world. The women wore jewelry that sparkled with genuine stones, and the men's watches caught the light with expensive metal and craftsmanship. I felt immediately out of place in my department store dress, but I straightened my shoulders and reminded myself of my mother's lessons about dignity. I was here because James loved me and wanted to share his life with me. That had to be enough. Victoria Whitmore glided toward us with the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. She was elegant in the way that only comes from decades of privilege, her silver hair styled to perfection, and her cream-colored gown clearly custom-made. Diamonds adorned her ears and throat, catching the light with every movement. "Elena, darling," she said, air-kissing my cheeks in a gesture that felt more performative than welcoming. "How lovely to finally meet you. James has told us so much about you." Her tone was polite, but I caught the slight emphasis on "finally," as if my absence from previous family gatherings had been noted and judged. Before I could respond, she continued, "I do hope you'll feel comfortable here tonight. I know our little gatherings can be quite overwhelming for those not accustomed to them." The comment was delivered with such practiced sweetness that it took a moment for the insult to register. She'd managed to suggest I was unsophisticated and out of my depth, while maintaining the veneer of hostess concern. James stepped closer to me, finally recognizing the subtle aggression in his mother's words. "Mother, Elena is perfectly comfortable in any social situation. She deals with people from all walks of life in her work." "Of course," Victoria replied smoothly. "How fascinating that must be for you, Elena. Working in hospitality must give you such interesting insights into human nature." The way she pronounced hospitality made it sound like a curiosity rather than a legitimate profession. I felt my cheeks warm but kept my voice steady. "I've learned a lot about people over the years," I said. "You'd be surprised how much someone's character shows through in how they treat service staff." It was a gentle challenge, and Victoria's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered her composure. "How perceptive of you. Now, let me introduce you to some of our friends. I'm sure they'll be fascinated to hear about your experiences." As she led us into the crowd, I realized this was going to be a very long evening. The introductions began immediately, and each one felt like a small test. I was destined to fail. Victoria guided us through clusters of elegantly dressed guests, her hand firmly on my elbow as if steering me through a minefield of social expectations. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Elena, James's fiancée," Victoria announced to the first group we encountered. "She works in the hospitality industry." The way she framed my profession made it sound temporary and insignificant, as if I were dabbling in hotel work rather than building a career. The group of women turned toward me with polite smiles that didn't quite mask their immediate assessment of my dress, jewelry, and overall presentation. "How interesting," said a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a tennis bracelet that probably cost more than my annual salary. "Which hotel chain do you work for?" "The Grand Meridian downtown," I replied, keeping my voice confident despite the growing knot in my stomach. "Oh, that's a lovely hotel," another woman chimed in. "We had our book club luncheon there last month. The service was impeccable. You must work very hard to maintain those standards." Her tone suggested she was praising a well-trained pet rather than acknowledging professional expertise. I felt my jaw tighten but maintained my composure. "I take pride in ensuring our guests have exceptional experiences," I said. "It's rewarding work when you genuinely care about people's comfort and satisfaction." The women exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their opinions on my career choice. Before anyone could respond, Victoria smoothly transitioned us to the next group, leaving me feeling like I'd just survived the first round of a boxing match. The pattern repeated throughout the evening. Each introduction emphasized my role as a hotel worker while downplaying any suggestion of expertise or ambition. James remained by my side, but I noticed he wasn't actively defending me or adding context about my supervisory role or my business aspirations. His silence spoke louder than any words. The comments became increasingly pointed as the evening progressed. At the buffet table, I overheard two older men discussing me in voices they clearly thought were discreet. "She seems pleasant enough," one said. "But really, what does James see in her? It's obvious she's after the family money." "Well, she's attractive," the other replied with a chuckle, "and I suppose she knows how to take care of things, given her line of work. Some men like that domestic touch." Their words reduced me to nothing more than a pretty face with useful cleaning skills. I gripped my champagne glass tighter and reminded myself that their opinions said more about them than about me. James's sister, Cassandra, approached me while James was occupied with his uncles across the room. She was younger than James, but carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. Her designer dress probably cost more than I made in 3 months, and she wore it with casual indifference. "So, Elena," she said, her voice honey-sweet with underlying steel, "tell me about your family. Where are you from originally?" I sensed this was another test, another opportunity for me to reveal my inadequate pedigree. "I grew up across town in the Riverside district. My mother worked very hard to provide for us after my father passed away when I was young." "How tragic," Cassandra said with practiced sympathy. "And what kind of work did your mother do?" "She cleaned office buildings at night," I said, lifting my chin with pride. "She taught me that honest work has dignity regardless of what other people think about it." Cassandra's eyebrows rose slightly at my defensive tone. "Of course it does. Though I imagine it must have been difficult for you, growing up with such limited resources." It's wonderful that James is able to provide you with opportunities you never would have had otherwise. The implication was clear. I was a charity case being rescued from poverty by their benevolent son. The assumption that I brought nothing of value to the relationship except my need for financial salvation made my blood boil. Actually, I said, keeping my voice level, I've supported myself since I was 18. I've worked my way up from entry-level positions through my own efforts. James and I fell in love because of who we are as people, not because of what either of us can provide financially. Cassandra's smile became even more condescending. How admirable. Though surely you must appreciate the security that comes with marrying into an established family. It must be such a relief to know you'll never have to worry about making ends meet again. Before I could respond to her insulting assumptions, she continued. Of course, there will be certain expectations that come with being part of this family. Social obligations, charitable commitments, maintaining appropriate appearances. I do hope you'll be able to adapt to those requirements. Her words carried a clear threat. Conform to our standards or face the consequences. I realized that Cassandra wasn't just questioning my background. She was establishing the terms of my potential acceptance into their family. I would be tolerated only if I transformed myself into their version of an acceptable wife. I think you'll find I adapt quite well to new situations, I said firmly. I've learned to handle all kinds of people and circumstances in my work. Cassandra's laugh was like breaking glass. Oh, I'm sure you have. Though I imagine the skills required for cleaning hotel rooms are quite different from those needed for managing a household staff and representing the family at important events. The casual cruelty of her comment hit me like a physical blow. She'd reduced my entire professional life to menial labor, while suggesting I was fundamentally unsuited for the lifestyle James could provide. Worst of all, she'd done it with a smile and tone that anyone overhearing would interpret as friendly conversation. I excused myself and escaped to the powder room, needing a moment to collect myself before I said something I'd regret. Looking at my reflection in the ornate mirror, I saw a woman who belonged in that elegant space just as much as anyone else. My dress might not have cost thousands of dollars, but I wore it with dignity. My jewelry might not sparkle with precious stones, but it was chosen with care and worn with pride. When I returned to the party, I found James deep in conversation with his father and several other men. Richard Whitmore was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, distinguished, and radiating the kind of authority that comes from generations of inherited power. He looked me over with calculating eyes when James introduced us. Elena, he said with a firm handshake. James tells me you work at the Grand Meridian. That's a well-regarded establishment. How long have you been in the hospitality industry? His questions seemed more genuine than the others I'd received, so I answered honestly about my 5-year career progression and my goals for the future. Ambitious, Richard nodded approvingly. I respect people who work their way up through their own efforts, though I imagine the pay in that industry is quite modest compared to other professions. Before I could respond, one of his friends jumped into the conversation. Richard, surely you're not going to let your son marry someone who'll never be able to contribute meaningfully to the family's financial portfolio. The comment was so blatantly offensive that I expected Richard to defend me, or at least redirect the conversation. Instead, he simply smiled diplomatically and changed the subject to business matters, effectively dismissing me from the discussion. I felt completely invisible as the men continued their conversation around me. James participated actively in their discussion of investments and market trends, seemingly oblivious to the fact that his fiancée had just been openly insulted by his father's friend. His silence in that moment felt like a betrayal of everything we'd built together. Moving away from the group, I found myself standing alone near the windows, overlooking the estate's gardens. The contrast between the beauty of the setting and the ugliness of the evening's interactions was jarring. This should have been a celebration of love and new beginnings, but instead it felt like a trial where I was being judged and found wanting by a jury of my social superiors. That's when I overheard the conversation that shattered any remaining illusions about the evening's purpose. A group of women had gathered near the fireplace, their voices carrying across the room with alcohol-fueled abandon. I just don't understand what James is thinking, one woman said. She's a maid, for heaven's sake. What could they possibly have in common? It's obvious, isn't it? Another replied. She's pretty enough and she probably makes him feel important. Some men enjoy that kind of worshipful attention from women who are grateful for their attention. But marriage? A third voice joined in. Surely this is just a phase. Richard and Victoria must be mortified. Imagine introducing her at the country club or charity galas. She'll be completely out of her depth. The poor thing probably thinks she's hit the jackpot, the first woman continued. From cleaning hotel rooms to living in a mansion, though I suppose someone will need to teach her proper etiquette and social graces. She can't very well represent the family looking like she shops at discount stores. Their laughter felt like acid on my skin. These women had reduced my entire identity to stereotypes and assumptions based on my profession. They couldn't conceive that I might have value beyond my economic status, or that James might love me for reasons that had nothing to do with gratitude or social climbing. I looked around the room for James and found him still engrossed in conversation with his father's business associates. He was laughing at something someone had said, completely unaware that his fiancée was being systematically demolished by his family and friends. The man who had proposed to me with such beautiful words about my character and values was now allowing those same qualities to be mocked and dismissed without a word of defense. The final blow came when Victoria approached me with a group of her closest friends. She introduced me to each woman with elaborate descriptions of their accomplishments, board positions, charitable foundations, children attending prestigious universities. When she reached me, the introduction was tellingly brief. And this is Elena, James's fiancée. She works at the Grand Meridian Hotel downtown. One of the women, a silver-haired matriarch dripping in pearls, looked me up and down with undisguised disapproval. "How refreshing," she said in a tone that suggested anything but refreshment. "I'm sure you must have fascinating stories about the hospitality industry, though I do hope you're planning to continue working after the wedding. It would be such a shame to waste all that experience." The suggestion that I would naturally quit my job after marriage revealed their assumptions about my motivations. They believed I was marrying James to escape work entirely, to live off his family's wealth without contributing anything meaningful to society. "Actually," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "I plan to continue developing my career. I'm hoping to eventually start my own hospitality consulting business." The women exchanged amused glances, as if I'd just announced plans to become an astronaut. "How ambitious," another woman said with patronizing approval. "Though I imagine you'll find that raising children and managing household staff will keep you quite busy enough." Their assumption that my dreams would naturally be abandoned for domestic duties infuriated me. These women had reduced my future to nothing more than an upgraded version of my current service role. Instead of cleaning hotel rooms, I'd be managing a household and raising children for their precious James. "I believe women can successfully balance career and family obligations," I said firmly. "My own mother managed to support our family while instilling strong values about the importance of work and independence." "How admirable," Victoria interjected smoothly. "Though of course the demands of maintaining a family's social position require a different kind of expertise than what you might be accustomed to. There are certain expectations and responsibilities that come with being part of an established family." Her words carried a clear warning. I would be expected to abandon my professional identity and transform myself into their version of an appropriate society wife. My own goals and aspirations would be sacrificed on the altar of their social expectations. I excused myself again, this time retreating to the terrace where I could breathe fresh air and collect my thoughts. The evening had become a nightmare of condescension and casual cruelty. Every interaction had been designed to remind me of my place in their social hierarchy, far below their standards and wholly dependent on their tolerance for acceptance. My phone buzzed with a text message, and I pulled it out gratefully, hoping for any distraction from the evening's humiliation. The message was from my father, whom I hadn't heard from in several weeks due to his busy travel schedule. "How's the engagement party going, sweetheart? I hope James's family is treating my daughter with the respect she deserves." Looking at those words, I realized how much I missed having someone in my corner, someone who saw my worth without qualification or condition. My father had always been my biggest supporter, even when his work took him away for extended periods. He'd taught me to value myself based on my character and actions rather than other people's opinions. I typed back quickly, "It's been challenging. These people see me very differently than you do." His response came immediately. "Anyone who doesn't recognize your value is the one with the problem, not you. Do you need me to come remind them of that?" For a moment I considered his offer. Then I remembered that my father was supposedly in Europe on business, thousands of miles away, and unable to rescue me from this social nightmare. I was on my own, facing people who had already decided I wasn't worthy of their precious son. "That's okay, Dad. I can handle this." I texted back, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. You're stronger than you know, Elena. Never let anyone make you feel small. I love you. His words gave me strength, but they also highlighted how alone I felt in that mansion full of people who had judged and dismissed me. James was still circulating among the guests, playing the perfect son while his fiancée was being socially executed by his family and friends. When I returned to the party, I overheard the conversation that would be the final straw. James's uncle Gerald was holding court near the bar, his voice loud with alcohol and malicious amusement. "Well, at least we know she's not after him for his looks," Gerald was saying to a group of men who roared with laughter. "Poor girl's probably never seen this much money in one place. Can't really blame her for trying to upgrade her situation from maid to millionaire's wife." The men around him continued laughing, treating my engagement like an entertaining spectacle rather than a genuine relationship. They saw me as nothing more than a gold-digging opportunist who had somehow tricked their naive relative into proposing. "Someone should probably explain to her that there will be a prenuptial agreement," another man added. "Can't have the help walking away with half the family fortune when reality sets in." Their casual discussion of my presumed mercenary motivations was the breaking point. I'd endured hours of subtle insults and condescending comments, but hearing myself reduced to a calculating schemer was more than I could bear. I walked directly to the group, my anger giving me courage I didn't know I possessed. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying clearly across their conversation. "I couldn't help but overhear your discussion about my motivations for marrying James." The men looked startled, clearly not expecting to be confronted by the subject of their ridicule. Gerald's face flushed red with embarrassment and alcohol. "Elena, we were just having a friendly conversation," he stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating. "Friendly?" I repeated, my voice growing stronger. "Is that what you call speculating about my character and suggesting I'm marrying James for his money? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're making assumptions about someone you don't even know." The room around us had grown quiet, other guests turning to witness the confrontation. I could see James pushing through the crowd, finally aware that something was wrong, but it was too late for his intervention to matter. "I work hard for everything I have," I continued, addressing not just Gerald but the entire room. "I've never asked James for money or gifts or financial support. I fell in love with him because of his kindness, his intelligence, and his character. I'm sorry if that's difficult for you to understand, but not everyone measures worth by bank account balances." Victoria appeared at my side, her face pale with mortification. "Elena, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No," I said firmly, surprising myself with my resolve. "I think it's important that everyone hear this. You've all spent this evening questioning my motives, my background, and my worthiness to join your family. You've reduced me to stereotypes and assumptions based on my profession, but none of you have bothered to actually get to know me as a person." I looked around the room at the faces staring back at me, some embarrassed, some defiant, all shocked by my audacity in speaking up for myself. I may work in hospitality, but that doesn't make me less intelligent, less ambitious, or less worthy of respect. I may not have been born into wealth, but I've built a life based on my own efforts and values. And I may not fit your idea of an appropriate wife for James, but that's between him and me, not you. James finally reached my side, his face a mixture of shock and dawning realization. "Elena, what's happening?" "What's happening," I said, looking directly at him, "is that your family has spent this entire evening making it clear that they consider me beneath their standards. And you've been too busy playing the perfect son to notice or defend the woman you claim to love." The truth of my words hit him visibly, and I saw the moment he realized how completely he'd failed me. But it was too late for apologies or explanations. The damage was done, and I couldn't unsee what I'd learned about his family or his willingness to protect me from their cruelty. That's when my phone rang, cutting through the tense silence that had fallen over the room. I glanced at the screen and saw my father's number. Without thinking, I answered. "Elena, I decided to cut my trip short. I'm actually in the city and wanted to surprise you. Can you send me the address? I'd love to meet James's family." The words that should have filled me with dread instead brought a surge of relief. My father was here, and he was about to meet the people who had spent the evening treating his daughter like an unwelcome intruder. "Actually, Dad," I said, loud enough for the entire room to hear, "that would be perfect. I think it's time you met them too." As I gave him the address, I could see the confusion on the faces around me. They couldn't understand why I would want to involve my family in what was clearly a social disaster. But they were about to learn something about the woman they'd so thoroughly underestimated. My father was coming, and everything was about to change. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.